We're going to do introductions, but first I'll start with Pat Miles, our host for the meeting and President and CEO of McMiles Foundation. And she's going to do it.
I would just like to welcome you all, and I think the important thing is that we're here, and Frank is here for our conversation, exchange of your ideas and his. And Frank was here earlier actually in November, and I think those of us who heard him felt that he had a grasp of the issues. He has worked in New Mexico for years. As I said, we can't get him out New Mexico. 40 years he's been in New Mexico, so he's a nearby state, so I think he understands some of the issues. And the Needmor Foundation has funded groups here too, so Frank is very familiar with our area. So, and he also brought two colleagues, Ken and Mary, so they are here also to kind of, again, talk with us about our situation, tell their story, and so I just appreciate everybody coming for the conversation. So I think if we just go around, because Frank, we'd all like to know kind of what people are doing, what your role is in terms of these current issues. They're all kind of overlapping, so I think they all dovetail together. So we kind of have to hear from everyone. So Jennifer, if you want to start?
Sure. My name is Jennifer Allen. I'm the Executive Director of the Border Action Network. We're a membership-based human rights community organization that works all over the state of Arizona. Our membership base is immigrant families, low-income families live along the Arizona-Mexico border. So we do a lot of community organizing and policy advocacy work, be it at local neighborhood issues to state legislature, and then also on national issues related to immigration reform and U.S.-Mexico border policy.
And in your spare time.
Joe Rubio, I'm the lead organizer with Valley Interfaith Project and the VIP Education Fund here locally, but also the supervising organizer for the Arizona Interfaith Network. Represent 150 congregations that have been part of community organizing for over 20 years. We developed an agenda for families and communities that range from healthcare, education, immigration reform, and trying to stop a lot of what has been happening lately. Long-term care, like the respite care issues, and now workforce development. But fundamentally, a deep concern about just how the public sector is considered in the state, and the importance of it, and the safety nets, and what that really means around economic development and future prosperity of Arizona. I think it's very important. Very concerned about that, and that does be part of our statewide conversation about how do we begin to look at that really in a collaborative and nonpartisan approach to what needs to happen and what the alliances need to be in this state. So thank you for having us.
I'm Elizabeth McMiles with St. Luke's Health Initiatives, and our work is in the area of healthcare, and what we've done historically is community development and then policy work related to systems design. And what we're doing most recently, and why we're very interested in this work, is the alignment of those two, because in terms of the changes that need to happen, unless there is a groundswell of the entire community involved, then the changes that need to happen don't. So we're trying to align those two efforts.
I'm Dana Neymar. I'm CEO of Children's Action Alliance, and we're a child advocacy organization, multi-issue. So our key issues are child care and early childhood education, child abuse and neglect, juvenile justice, and children's health. But like Elizabeth and Joe, we really have a focus on the bigger picture as well, and kind of the role of the public sector and community health. And so we get involved in a lot of coalitions, a lot of convening. We do lobby the state legislature, and also do a lot of work in the community, the media, and communication.
Hi, I'm Ed Portnoy. I'm the Director of Grants Programs for the United Nations Holy Charitable Trust. And our basic work is done through the nonprofits that we raise funds to. Primary areas of focus are helping people in need, protecting animals, and nature, and enriching the community. And right now we're going through kind of a grants program revision. We're meeting with our grants team, and we had a retreat recently, and we'll be meeting with our board again next week. We'll try to talk about how we can change a more charitable model, a more philanthropic, strategic model, really looking for transformational change as opposed to just charitable giving. So after 12 years of grant making, I think
I'm Mary Sobecki. I'm with the Needmor Fund. The Southwest is not my turf. It's covered by Frank, obviously, and very well. But I happen to be in the area on a vacation this week, visiting relatives and friends. And so when I heard this gathering was being organized, Frank asked me to participate so I could develop a better understanding. So I'm really here to learn today more about what's happening out here as well as what the funding communities are interested in. So,
And you're based in Chicago?
no, I'm based in Toledo, Ohio, which is
Toledo,
where Needmor
where
is.
the base is. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. Thank you.
I'm Ken Rolling. I'm on the board of the Needmor Fund. I'm from Chicago. The board of the Needmor Fund is split between family members and what we call civic members. I'm one of the civic members. I'm not a member of the Stranahan family. That is the family behind the state Needmor.
And my name is Frank Sanchez, and I work with the Needmor Foundation. I told some of the story when I presented a few months back, and in a way, this meeting is a little bit of a follow-up to that presentation that I made and the panel that was talking about advocacy. But the Needmor Fund has been around for more than 50 years. It is the Stranahan family who established the Needmor Fund. It's a small family foundation. Our focus, our niche is funding community organizing. And our bottom line for funding organizing, it has to be multi-issue, membership-based, direct action, organizing low and moderate income communities. So that's our concentration, that's our focus. Then also the other thing the Needmor Fund does, especially since we are a small foundation, we do network, we try to leverage our little bit of money with other foundations. So we work in a lot of different affinity groups. We work with the Funders Committee for Civic Participation. I'm in the leadership of that, which is the vehicle to get money out for civic engagement, for voter participation. We also are very active in the Neighborhood Funders Group, which is a national affinity group of about 250 foundations that works in neighborhoods. And our membership there is made up of community foundations that fund community development and fund community organizing. And I really want to put an emphasis today on the Neighborhood Funders Group because we're going to be in the region. We're having our national conference this year in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's going to be October 25th through the 27th. So we're trying to get as many of the regional foundations to come in and join us. And I think you'll find a lot of like-minded colleagues that fund social justice, fund neighborhoods, fund low and moderate income communities, fund advocacy, fund community development. Usually we have 200 to 250 representatives of foundations, and the conference will be outside of Albuquerque at the time I resort on the Santa Ana reservation. So I want to invite you up front to that, and I'll remind you at the end of the discussion today. And when I called Pat, we've been talking about this. The purpose of this and really wanted to be a conversation is about one is how of course, we're interested in community organizing. That's our niche. And we're not here to proselytize. That's the only way. But that's what we fund. But what we recognize in the state of Arizona, and I've been in and out of this state with different foundations for 25 years. So I've seen its development, I've seen the progress, and I've seen the regression, to some, what we all know nationally, some people consider very bad laws. So I've kind of seen it all. I've seen the development of a lot of different organizations. But what's always been lacking enough resources to do the work in Arizona, both within the state, I would say, and then from outside the state. And I think there are some foundations that are interested, but I think it really starts with the foundations in the state. If they're the driving force and begin to develop the relationships with those national foundations, I think we can begin to leverage all that money to create a larger pie of money for the different organizations that we care about. So that's the purpose, is to have a conversation about that. I've spoken to Marguerite Casey Foundation. They're very interested. They already fund some organizations in this state. They're really interested in trying to expand that pie of money. Peter Block Garcia wanted to be here today. He couldn't just because of his other commitments. For Freedom's Fund has had a large role in the state trying to deliver money. The Carnegie Corporation through different vehicles. So I think there's a real possibility, potential of really increasing that pie. So that's really the conversation. And I think the foundation for that, if I can respectfully say, it starts with a local foundation. For many years when I would come to Arizona, folks would ask me, or I'd try to get other foundations interested in Arizona. I'd go, well, where are the local funders? And at that time, there just wasn't. And obviously, sitting around this table, there is now. And I think if we are a little more collective, a little more collaborative, a little more organized, I think we can do something about trying to raise that amount of money. Because as I look at the budgets of many of the organizations, the budgets are, tiny, and the need for developing the capacity of these organizations, they need to double those budgets. Some of it they need to raise it internally, and some of it they need support from, social justice advocacy foundations. So that's the purpose for the day. And I do want to say my colleagues were very modest. They all have years and years of national foundation work. Mary's a leader in the Ohio Grantmakers. Is it Forum? Is it called Forum? She's a leader in the Interfaith Funders, which is a affinity group of funders that fund interfaith groups. Ken ran or was the funder for community organizing for Woods Fund of Chicago for many years, and then ran the Annenberg Challenge, which was an education that provided millions of dollars to education reform in Chicago. And was a founder of one of the founders of Neighborhood Funders Group. So they have quite a bit of experience, and so hopefully they will add to the conversation. So I'd just like to open it up, just kind of reaction to what I'm saying. If it's true, not true, is there possibilities to really ratchet up and get some more money into this state for the kind of things that we care about?
Well, I think,
And I want to thank Pat, who's always been so gracious host.
I think it was probably about 6 months ago when we had a gathering of CEOs of foundations in Arizona. And I think because of all the things that are happening, people are looking for a new way, as Ed, you said, a new way of going about things. And so I think the time is right, and I think what we've tried to do is a small foundation, and again, we're very small, our grants are very small, but this has kind of been our focus since the beginning, the last, 6 years, we've just been here 6 years, so we're very new and very small. And we realized we've had some other collaborations in Arizona recently, and people seem to be much more willing and know that they have to work together. So it seems to me that the time is right, and we have people who are doing the work here. They have been doing it for many years. So there's activity here. It's not all new to the state. So I think a combination of the timing and supporting the people that are doing the work, as you said, bringing them to scale, helping them to function at a higher level simply because there's more funds available. To me, that seems like the challenge right now. And just appreciate you coming, and hopefully we'll have others that also come. There are other people who hope to come today but weren't able to, who are interested in our efforts. So thank Frank and all of you for coming.
I didn't know. I was thinking the same thing. I did not. Thank you, Tom. How nice.
So the food's sitting there in the fourth grade.
It's the little things, right?
One of the things that we didn't talk about last time, which I wanted to raise in November, was what are some of the challenges to raising more money for the kind of groups that we have, both within your own foundation as well as with some of your sister foundations, and what could we do to kind of help that out? More education, more individual meetings with foundations. And that may be one way to talk about, the work, so.
I think the Arizona Grantmakers Forum has done a lot of work, and one of the things that we find here is that a lot of foundations have their base, or the people who have started them are from back east, and so they have given, a lot of their money goes back east, but there's a tremendous effort now and drive within the board of Arizona Grantmakers to reach out to those people, and a lot of them are now starting to fund here. So I think there are some resources. I think the number of foundations and the amount of money here is smaller than a lot of places. So I think that's one of our challenges, but I think Arizona Grantmakers is making, you can maybe say more about that, Tom.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do is reach out to foundations in Arizona. As Pat said, if we have about 1,300 foundations in Arizona, I think it's less than 200 have more than $1 million in assets. So it is a small amount of money. But there are a lot of foundations who aren't plugged into AGF. And even if they don't become a member, we're going to try to do our best to at least get them plugged in so that they can join into collaborations that they may not know about any other way. So we have our membership committees working on just how we're going to do that. Because it's very important, especially nowadays, to get folks to collaborate because there's so little resources. In order to have an impact, we're going to need to pull money together because no one's going to be able to do it on their own.
I'm just curious, I come from the community foundation world before I came to Needmor. So I'm just curious about how many community foundations there are in the state, and also, is it possible to engage them in this type of work? I know in other communities or other states, I think around the country, that's one of the nuts we're trying to crack, and sometimes you can find someone embedded in those organizations that might be supportive, or at least, in favor of the type of work you're trying to do, even if they have to do it sort of covertly. So I'm just kind of curious about the community foundations out there.
The good news is Arizona Community Foundation, which represents the state pretty much, is a member and we have a board member. And then the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, we have this Tucson primarily in Southern Arizona. He's also just joined the board. So, and they're members of our organization. So they're very plugged in.
In terms of supporting
Pretty good
social
work.
justice and community organizing, I think there is potential. They both have new leadership.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of interest. I think there's definitely potential.
Really? Okay.
I would say there's some history behind social justice, but not, there's some.
Their difficulty is that they don't have too much unrestricted money to spend. I mean, so much is just donor advised funds, they have very little leeway in terms of doing their own foundation. And of course, Carla was that. James, Carla Roberts was one of the board directors. He just left to go to the Midwest somewhere, right? Head up the foundation. But there is good potential.
But they just set up too a public policy committee or public policy.
AGF is putting together a public policy committee right now. So
But Arizona Community Foundation, I think, has also set up a public policy.
Oh, so there might be some.
Oh, yes, I think they're ready.
So the Tucson guy is Clint Mabey. He's
That's
from
right.
Chicago. I mean, I know him. He comes out of a real understanding of what he used to work somewhat as a volunteer, but I think somewhat as a staff with the Chicago Community Trust, which is a huge community foundation, and he was very much engaged with what we would call community development or organizing advocacy kind of work. He would be somebody who's very understanding of this.
and that's true. Both of the new leaders are from out of state. So Steve Selesnick's from D.C., Washington, D.C. area. So,
Well, that's right, and just their presence at the last board meeting, to me, was extremely hopeful, because they were just in there. It's like a new page. We're going ahead, we get together, and like Tucson's response to the situation there was very encouraging, I think, that they are aware of what the issues are, and they're willing to deal with them, and
Well, Tony Banegas wanted to be here this morning, but he had a conflict in his schedule also. So we're going to definitely follow up with him, and I'm also putting some other foundations in touch with him. And then there's some colleagues that we work with know the CEO of the Arizona Community Foundation. So I think that's going to be kind of ongoing, the dialogue. The sense I got the last time I was here was I guess there are a little bit of resistance doing is who makes up some of their donors. You know, who makes up their donors, you know, because they have donors that don't necessarily agree with, you know, the objectives of social justice. And so that's always and that's a tension in any community foundation. So, but it seems like they're trying to work around that, with that.
Well, and I think there's potential too, just like you said, they have a lot of, their unrestricted dollars are limited, but they do have a lot of directed donor advisors. Sometimes it's a matter of pushing the community foundation to work with individual donors who might have more of this
That's right.
perspective and getting those funds earmarked to support this type of work.
I think they could
So,
use some help in doing that. I've had conversations with people who are not there anymore, so over the last few years, and it was not something that came naturally to them.
right.
And so I think that's an area for development.
And of course, there's a fine line because community foundations don't like to be told what to do. So you sort of have to straddle that. But if you have new people in who are receptive in the, get to know you phase, planting those seeds could probably have some future.
Since Steve came in about a year ago, he's gone through an entire
Yeah.
gearing of the of course, let's reorganize. And Steve told me that there were like 4 main priority areas that they had identified, and it's going to be environment, presumably that, and education, and a couple other things, but social justice wasn't among them. And so I think it'd be difficult to come in now and say, after you've gone through this whole reorganization plan and identifying your priorities, let's put a 5th one in there,
Right. But getting them to maybe look through the social justice lens
Right.
at the ones they
Yes.
have identified.
Right.
The environment,
Certainly with education.
education. So.
And they got Jerry Hirsch and stuff, folks are, Jerry's very active. A lot of third world development areas. It wouldn't be hard to get Jerry.
What was the name you just mentioned, Jerry Burns?
Jerry Hirsch.
Oh, Hirsch.
I think Jackie Alling is also very concerned and understands. She did the moderating for our panel, and she understands the issue, and I think, is hoping to work, and I think is working with individual foundations so I think she would also be very helpful. So I think a conversation with them.
Yeah, and they've just merged the program and marketing side, so that program people can talk with donors about what kind of programs they can fund. At the same time, donors can understand, this programmatic model. So those are separate pieces of the organization before. And so now it's more aligned, so they can speak the same language. But is it the money aspect of it, or is it really identifying what kind of outcomes that social justice would have in this locality? For me, I think that stands out as kind of an issue. Raising money is one thing, but toward what end? And so many are just obvious in Arizona.
Right.
Immigration issues, community development, some of those other kinds of things. But I think for a lot of foundations, they want to know, okay, if I'm putting money into this, what are the outcomes that we're going to get? And the other time, it's a double-edged sword, but when you're doing community organizing, community development, you don't tell the community what they need, you're right for them. It's got to emanate from grassroots.
I think that's all. It depends on the approach of the foundation. Some foundations are more outcome oriented. They want to see 35 homes built, for example, or they want a completely new economic development plan for a community that's going to create so many jobs. And then there's other foundations, us as a case in point, that we're as interested in the process as the outcomes, because our central value is democracy. That democracy work for everyone, and that people participate in the decisions that affect their lives. And what we're doing more and more is convincing foundations that is an outcome, that is important to everything else. And there is more and more literature being developed that proves the point. If there's an active, engaged, organized community, it's better for the whole community. So I think we have enough literature, enough, solid data now that proves that, that, so, and part of it's the organizations. Obviously, we have some organizations with us. That is going to matter, who the organizations are in the state, who's being funded, and their success at, whatever they do is very, very important, because I find when I travel in the states is people always they'll point to you, as foundations do, well, this group failed. They always know the one that failed. They can't ever describe the ones that succeeded, But, so it really matters. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it is some outcome, but I think even in community organizing now, we can demonstrate outcomes, And part of that is just doing some more education on what that data is, what the evaluations have been. I think all of us have been involved in evaluations.
And the research too, I think that was, excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was just, the research that you mentioned the last time you were here that has been done in New Mexico, and also now is 4 or 5 other states where they have some measurable results, economic as well as social changes in those areas. So I don't know if you want to mention
Yeah,
that.
I pointed that out last time. It says the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy has done these reports all over the nation in different states, not every state. The first one was in New Mexico, and what they did is, I forgot the formula, but they did, for every dollar that a foundation spent, there was $150, something like that, more or less, return for public good. So they've been able, and it's pretty solid. They've had it vetted through all kinds of, academia. It's a pretty solid figure. And what they did is every dollar was spent invested in the organization. They created, much more child care. So that was the outcome. And so it's very solid. And there's more and more of that being done. There's a report in New Mexico and LA, on the Northwest, on Minnesota, and North Carolina. And I think that's, kind of information you all need to have when you come up against those challenges with foundations. All you do is go as ncrp.org, I think, just to get that, and you can download all those reports. Yeah, that's a very good point. So I just think it's we don't have to back down from it. We can prove that this works, and how it impacts in a positive way with real dollars to communities, and how it improves communities.
It's a little awkward timing here right now, honestly, because we've lost so much in 2 years.
Right.
I mean, we basically lost pretty much everything we gained in 20 years. So it's an awkward time to be marketing that. So any advice you have, I'm totally with you on the concept.
Right.
We certainly use that, but it's difficult. It's difficult timing. The other thing I wanted to say is I think in terms of the culture of funders here, community organizing, the concept of it and the value of it might not resonate as much as civil discourse, civic engagement. So when you talk about democratic process, I think there is an interest in that here, but it comes at it from a little bit different angle.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I think we would behoove all of us to be conscious of those angles.
Right. And I totally agree. Every state is different, and you have to, it's obvious to me, coming from the outside, first of all, it's very, the environment's very poison. The dialogue is very poison. Maybe that's an understatement, And I think some of that has to be clear before you can get to these other issues,
But that is exactly the opportunity too.
Right.
So that everybody is unhappy and knows that what we've done historically isn't working. And so I think people are searching, but there is, I think as organizations make that transition, how you talk about the issue is going to be really important so that you can make that transition. But the data that you're talking about in terms of impact is real compelling in that regard with foundations about making the changes, whether it's in education or in healthcare or economic development. And so I think that the time is exactly, it couldn't be better. And so that's the one silver lining for how bad it is today. Because I don't think we would go this quickly, but I'm hearing conversations among foundations that we
like, we were up at the state capitol yesterday, we met with one of the state senators, and what she was saying is, we just need, like on some of this immigration, we just need people that can come up and testify against these bills with good information. And people that you know, the other, you know, the people promoting these bills will listen to, sort of the ones on, on the margins. I'm not talking about, there's a hard,
Yeah, right.
There are lots of people testifying with good information.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're very
The
credible.
last part you said, who they will listen to, that.
right, well, that was her point.
Yeah.
She said, you know, they're,
Well, I think right now the chambers are.
playing,
Now,
After they get severely kicked around, then they.
We have the hospital, the hospital.
right.
Mhm.
I think that's the only people, the people promoting those bills.
right.
I mean, I don't know, Jennifer, how you feel, but I've been encouraged, maybe too strong a word, but I think seeing that a lot of Republican senators really are not comfortable with trying to come up with our own definition of citizen, they're really not comfortable with it. That's been a little bit heartening for me now. How it will play out still remains to be seen, but they're really not comfortable with it. So, but finding what those levers are and what helps give them cover and comfort.
Cover is right.
I think in this case, a lot of it was the legal arguments that you're going to spend all this time and money, and then the Supreme Court is not going to decide on the decision you want anyway.
Right.
And certainly the image of the state and the impact on tourism, for the ones who are concerned, that matters to them. I think 5, 6, 7 Republican senators who I think really do not want this. I don't know, you guys.
Yeah. And I think that what we're seeing is just there's a growing divide. There is a rift where people are saying enough, that this is, for a variety of reasons, and not necessarily for the same reasons we say enough, but for enough because it's taking us down economic terrain, it's bad on tourism, it's bad on investment in the state, and so it's that divide, we're saying great opportunities, that if we can continue to sort of pull more people together and make new alignments, then the divide grows and that trend diminishes.
I say the issue here, though, is broader than immigration. Immigration is symptomatic of it. And in fact, it has been a convenient distraction for those who really want to undo the public sector, which is a process we've been on for about 20, 25 years. We just have not seen it because of the swings in the economy. So when we want to think about organizing and investing in organizing, you've got to understand that there's 3 things at play. We've got a broken economy, a broken budget, and broken politics. Because, you know, your state house does not respond to an establishment like it does in most areas, which is what we're seeing. So we then invest in organizing, understand the moment it's a long-term process to rebuild a civic infrastructure that can then leverage the rebuilding of the public sector. Investments in healthcare, education, primarily, which again, in safety. That's what this pays for. And that is part and parcel of the economic health and future of the state. And there's got to be institutions and entities that are willing to invest in that to make sure that that's solid, for the next generations. That's really the battle we're in. And traditional, if I may be so bold, traditional ways of funding the philanthropy have not been investing in rebuilding that sector. And basically that's been a vacuum in this state. In fact, when you look at the dynamics of leadership, it has been the philanthropic leaders at least been looking at that and asking questions where the corporate leadership has not been there. They're beginning to catch up. And immigration is an example of where they're seeing that they need to do that. Not quite sure how to organize themselves, but the corporate configuration is very different than it was 15, 20 years ago. For a number of reasons. And so, it's going to be a patient process. It will not happen overnight. If you want to talk politically, it's probably 2 to 3 election cycles away if we do things right.
excuse me, but your point about the patient long-term investment, and that's where, my experience with foundations, our attention span's very short, and along with doing what we're doing is convincing whatever foundation, this is long-term investment infrastructure. Excuse me.
I would say there is a really compelling role around the shifting demographics in the state and how communities are being pulled and created apart in this sort of struggle. The changing face of Arizona, just like the changing face of other communities around the country, and the growing Latino population, there's these tensions that are emerging. And so I think in many ways as well, being able to demonstrate through civic participation, civic engagement, that we indeed are all united within our communities and have to be able to work together and sort of reweaving, very cliche, reweaving the social contract. Sorry.
That'll be a conference meeting somewhere along the way.
But restoring those relationships and seeing one another as being part of making our communities better and stronger. I mean, I think that is also part of those tensions that around organizing and in a policy that we have to be able to address. We're just going to continue to be at one another and rubbing off.
And that is person to person.
Yeah.
So one of the things that this conversation triggers for me is the convening role that the Arizona grant makers can do, as well as community foundation. And the most effective stuff that I've seen, at least with our community foundation in Chicago, is that they would convene, do this, get this public dialogue going around issues, right? Bringing folks together who weigh in well, bring in some expertise, bring in that kind of thinking, along with the thinking that other sort of sets or groups of foundations have done. It's the foundation conversation that's kind of the most effective in many ways, right? So it's not some organization or some point of view just making its case, but it's the hopes in the industry kind of talking to each other, what's going on out there, what's our role, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing I would just add to that is that so many of the national affinity groups have great research, great reports, all funded by other foundations that speak to the effectiveness of all the strategies we're trying to point to. The thing one that comes to mind it's just out is Nellie Mae Foundation, which is in New England. I forget which state they're located, but they've done a whole series of reports, sort of surveys and research reports looking at the impact of civic engagement, parent engagement, community organizing, and school reform. And it becomes credible because a foundation pulled this together, took a look at what are the issues as we talk about. I mean, every foundation, at least that I run into, wants to do something about education, but they're getting pulled in so many directions. They're getting pulled toward all these silver bullets that are out there, and not about real community engagement in that work. So anyway, but there's stuff out there now that's very practical, talking about effective programs or approaches and offering people a variety of those kinds of things to think about how you might implement that in your community. But all the affinity groups, the national affinity groups, have studies, reports, examples, surveys, that I think can be tapped when you have a community dialogue, among funders and groups.
Isn't that what O'Connor House is all about?
Yeah.
I mean, what Senator O'Connor is trying to do with this O'Connor project. Is bringing disparate groups together to have civic discourse and teach them how to be able to talk across.
Is that a foundation or is that?
No, it's a private 501c3 that's formed by Justice and their supporters. They want to put Sandra O'Connor in a bottle, as I call it.
Oh.
They say there's this, when she gets together with groups, she has a way of being able she's Justice.
She can.
Yeah.
She
We
can.
respect her because she is who she is. And so they want funding to be able to kind of do this kind of an ethnographic study of how she formed her way of doing things, so that they can continue on through the economy. And they've chosen domestic violence as their first issue, and then are moving into some other areas. It's brand new. I mean, they've got a grant from Avon, domestic violence. Irene Jacobs is now working there, and they're looking to hire a perfect super. I mean, that has some potential. Flynn Foundation is doing their institute on civic discourse and civic engagement. The new institute that just formed in Tucson, which kind of trumps what they were trying to do in Phoenix. That's in the common on their board. So that's interesting. I think they'll come from others have signed on.
How much do you think you all are, foundations in state are willing to engage with outside foundations? And let me just give you an example where I found it didn't happen. I've been in at least 2, maybe 3 different funder briefings in the state, and it was all, which was strange. It was all of us from the outside, no local foundation support. And part of us, we failed to reach out. But, for example, we did one in June around SB 1070. Arizona Community Foundation did show up, and maybe one other foundation. But again, it didn't feel like that briefing was owned by the Arizona Foundation, or they had much ownership over it. 7 years ago, we actually did the Neighborhood Funders Group conference here. And we specifically brought it because we saw all these issues coming, and we were trying to get more outside foundations to invest. So all these foundations came from the outside, and there wasn't much participation inside the state. So, if we push this, promote it, our foundations here wanting to engage and be more on top, because I think you should be more on top of when a lot of groupings of foundations come from outside the state. You should be part of it, engaged in it. So, I just throw out that question.
I just think it's the timing thing in terms of there being a recognition that the old strategies don't work. But second, I think how do you talk about it? Because funding community organizing for community organizing state doesn't sell. But if you talk about education reform, healthcare reform, and one of the key strategies is this, and it's community engagement, community development, and that we haven't invested long term in those kinds of things that really will make a difference in how it's shaped. And so it's framed, and I think the collaborative is the only way to do it, because a lot of our foundations are relatively small. And so you really do need to do it as a collaborative. But each of us has our own boards and politics that go with those boards. But there are commitments to healthcare reform, commitments to healthcare reform. And so I think if we're talking about doing that work together, and then how do you engage the community in making that happen, I think we're more there than we've ever been. And doing it together makes a lot of sense, both from just a dollar sense and from letting people move into it depending on their board's comfort. Or, so they could fund sections of it that are comfortable to them because it's part of a larger picture.
As a recipient of both national and local grants, we're beginning to find that there's a much more reciprocal relationship with, Needmor said that because, get your focus, but of really wanting to understand this as a partner. Sometimes I find a very instrumental nature in the national funders, which does not connect with local, in a sense that they, in a sense, really want to micromanage how social policy works here. Well, I think it is a bit disruptive. We need to look at carefully. I could understand why it's almost 2 different things between the national and the local. And, in a sense, I think it would be helpful if maybe the local granting entities could talk to the embassy and say, maybe not yet, or you need to look at a different approach. Yeah.
We're one of the, Needmor's, and we're in all those circles, and we're probably some of the toughest critics on our national colleagues in terms of this I call it transactional relationship, and sort of, who serves who? Does the foundation serve the organizations, or does the organization serve the foundation? And that's sort of what's going on. It's a heck of a dance.
Because in fact, we have walked away from national conversations in some cases when they have tried to put us in situations where we did not belong. Did not think were appropriate or respectful to the work of what needed to happen here. And so, I just found locally there's much more receptivity to really things collectively.
Yeah. What we preach, but it doesn't always resonate, is we preach general operating support. Do your thorough evaluation of the organization, and if something meets your mission, general operating support, be supportive and move out of the way. Because the folks on the ground know the work better than we'll ever know it. So that's been our philosophy, but that's not, that's not very common. And actually, the trend is more, against that. It's more initiative driven, more, this is the way we see the world. Right. So it's tough. In fact, I'm going to a retreat in 2 weeks for the Funders Committee for Civic Participation. I'm in the leadership of that steering committee. I'm a minority voice in that about, these state-driven initiatives. I think there's some value to them, and they've added some value to the organization, but there are some destructive parts to it. But, that's something we have to deal with. But again, it goes back to the point. That's why I think you need to have some ownership over the agenda when these foundations come in to raise this issue. The world doesn't work, just like you pointed out, the world doesn't work that way here in Arizona right now. And this is how and where we could use the money and how we could use it. So I think it's really critical that you get engaged. And I would at least like to ask, are people comfortable as we talk with other foundations to say, talk to Pullman, talk to St. Luke's, talk to McMiles. You're comfortable with that? Beginning to get them engaged with you all? Are you? Yeah.
And I guess my question is, what steps can we take? I think the whole idea of convening, who are the people we need to bring together? Or how do you, I think even a small foundation would like to put some of our money into that. We don't have that much money, but convening people and bringing the right people together has always been a priority in terms of what we want to do. But the key would be who to bring together and how Arizona would have this discussion first and clarify our responsibility or what we're about, so that when we do speak to the national foundations, we're kind of all not on the same page, but kind of know what other people are thinking. And I think that's something. There's a meeting coming out of this meeting on what would be the next step, or what would be what we could do as a foundation. I know the board would then be very much in favor of that. So I guess that's my question. Is what I don't know. That's kind of where I am right now. What would be the next step?
If I could just toss out an idea, one of the ways that we've tried to do that in Ohio is through our regional association.
Yeah.
Crafting a discussion or a session at the end, I'm assuming you have annual conference.
Used to.
You don't have anymore. Okay, but some sort of gathering, either a regional meeting or something, begin a conversation there. And we have actually found that sometimes that has spun off to the forming of a group or body that then carries that agenda forward. So, this meeting here today could be sort of a good core for putting together a session or a gathering that would educate and broaden and reach out to other folks who are like-minded. So, again, we use our regional association.
That's what we've done in New Mexico too, because I'm very active in the New Mexico Association of Grant Makers, and more it's working. So I really appreciate the role you all are playing more and more.
And it takes time. Again, it's a process and it takes time. It's not going to be boom.
And we also know all foundations are not going to be exactly on the same page, because we all have our own board of trustees. We all have our own.
But as long as everyone's hearing the same message.
Right.
So that they all know what the message is.
Right.
committee, the new one that you guys have established, or is it sounding like a new affinity group that could spring up, or is that too much
I
to
think you
put
can
on
start
that
with the public
plate?
policy and see where it goes. Like I said, we're just now asking people to join. I just sent an email this morning out today saying there's a new public policy committee if you want to join, blah, blah, blah. So it's just starting.
And I think that's broader, that if you have an affinity group, it tends to be just about that. And it really needs to be embedded in all of our work, all of the time.
Okay, so the committee is a
Yeah.
better way to go.
Because everybody is affected by policy in terms of things they can and can't do.
Well, that's the funny thing that came up while we were talking. People go, we're not involved with public policy. Well, yes, you
Yes, you
are.
Yes, you are.
It's happening to you.
Exactly.
The other thing I would say though, this is excellent timing that kids learn a lesson from Ohio because to some degree, not enough of these voices initially found its way to our public policy committee, and so some of its purposes got co-opted or, directed other ways. So this is excellent timing for you all to get engaged in that one and make sure that that table represents all the different views and potential.
And Jack Jewett has offered to be on the committee, and also Steve from Arizona Community Foundation. They both immediately said we're on the committee, so that leadership is
Well, that's key.
key,
Yeah.
very important.
I mean, our caution is that sometimes it ends up being policy around philanthropy only. So, and that's my cautionary tale, is we don't want it to, I'm assuming you don't want it to go that way. So, it's a lot of self-interest. And that's why we learn our lesson.
Don't head that way.
But you didn't hear it here. So,
We've seen too much.
yeah.
I was thinking about organizing social justice within a public policy committee. I think that from our perspective, the policy can often be thought of as the politics or the policies themselves, but it's that process piece that's actually so incredibly important that not fall out, because in many ways the means to arrive at solid policies and having low-income communities of color engaged in creating that, defining that, is that process of getting there is so critical.
And what about participation in national forums? Is that something that we're open to? Like, the Neighborhood Funders Group obviously is coming up. And I think we would be willing if enough folks came over from Arizona to do an Arizona table. Because we're doing one on New Mexico. We're going to gather everyone that funds in New Mexico, both inside and outside. And it's usually a breakfast roundtable or something, just to meet each other and have a conversation and share, what's being funded, what's needed. So, we'd be willing to do that if enough folks come to that. And necessarily, if you don't come to the whole conference, you could come for that day to do that.
In your private jet.
What's that? Yeah, my private jet, right. See how we can do that.
Nice location, I've seen it.
What's that?
It's a nice location.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the location's great, and it's being hosted by like I said, Santa Ana.
Especially in October.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The resort's right along the Rio Grande River, and it's right in the Santa Ana Pueblo tribe, so we're going to get a lot of the cultural. And that's one thing this year, we've tried to before, but especially since we're in New Mexico, we're going to emphasize a lot of the Native American organizations and culture of the state, which doesn't usually get a lot of visibility in these conferences.
Well, I think, what you're adding in some of the larger foundations, the smaller ones really can't afford,
Right.
they don't have the private jets, they can't afford to go to a lot of these
Right.
national level conferences. So, but if the word comes from your organizations, if you're able to share it, and, Ed, I know you go to a lot of these things, and between there and Indiana too. And I think, St. Luke's, not too much. But if it filters through one a year, if it filters through AGF so that more people can hear about it, then even if we can't maybe attend all of them, we can get the gist of it or get the materials from it and, try to keep it
If one
going.
person goes, then we can have a local meeting.
Yeah, maybe
That
from the
person
public
sharing.
policy committee,
Because there
somebody
is
can.
something really beneficial about the dialogue.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
And And I would imagine that a lot of folks that are gonna come to the Southwest are coming because they already support the Southwest. There's gonna be a lot of interest in learning more about not just Arizona, but learning about New Mexico, Texas, Colorado. So, so I really encourage you, send one or two people or a delegation, or if you can't afford, I know these things are expensive and they're not in a lot of travel budgets, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. But.
Well, and then too, going back to how we've sometimes done it in Ohio, we've gone, a group of us or some of us might have been present at an NFT conference session that particularly resonated for us, and then our state association has brought that particular piece in and duplicated it for locals. So you might send someone sort of on the expedition to NFT to see which sessions would be really applicable and helpful here, and then just bring that session out here for your constituencies.
Since you had mentioned that you had some affiliation with VISTA, one of the things that we were looking at is how to increase the capacity of our ongoing support of community-based activity through things like AmeriCorps. And so is that something that is, I mean, their mission seems very much aligned in terms of what they want to do, but I didn't know how prescriptive it would be. But in terms of an ongoing source that you know there will be resource for community, because the AmeriCorps ones, as I understand it, the volunteers come from the community. So if you identify the leadership in the community, then you have a source for stipends, anywhere from quarter-time to full-time, so that you've got people that are always there coordinating, sharing information, and bringing folks together. So has anybody done that as a strategy from a
Well, first of all, my experience with Vista is a whole nother world from what it is today. Like when I was a Vista supervisor 35 years ago, 30 years ago, we hired community organizers. All our Vista volunteers were called community organizers. So that would be unheard of today. So, but there are some organizations that are using AmeriCorps to engage young people in this work. I don't know, y'all may be more updated.
Yeah, I've been trying to deal with the National Office of Corporation for National Community Service in some of the projects that I'm working in around the country. There's a few issues there. Yes, it's a source of labor, source of people who can work. While the staff nationally is in support of organizing and advocacy and making that part of what AmeriCorps is, that gets interpreted very differently state by state. So the AmeriCorps slots are run through the states, and there's this dance, as you can imagine, in D.C. around how much you promote advocacy, organizing, that kind of training and so forth. So it's and then the other issue is, it's slated to be cut. It's part of the budget cuts, and the corporation may actually lose everything that they have through AmeriCorps, and then they have various sort of sub-grant programs that aren't necessarily AmeriCorps slots, but are grants and are opportunities to do youth organizing and things like that. So it's I think you want to find out you got to figure out what's going on in this state as the pipeline that comes into the state, how much money is there, and then how they regulate what AmeriCorps volunteers can use. Including an issue is that we've been trying to deal with is how much sort of on-the-job training and education you can do as part of the slot versus they just have to be out there cleaning up parks or whatever. If there's a real service learning model is what they apply to AmeriCorps workers, dropping off the learning. So it's really a lot about social services and about doing that kind of physical work versus what we would like to see is helping to do outreach, organizing, building community. It's just.
I was going to say, and I think we talked about this. I was a Vista volunteer 40 years ago.
Yes, same here.
And our job was to eliminate poverty. That's why I joined.
Right.
And then Nixon.
That's pretty clear. Eliminate poverty.
Then it became action.
Yeah,
you know,
right, yeah.
And they bundled all these organizations into it. I joined the National Disc Alliance
Oh, yeah.
saying that we don't want to promote volunteerism. I mean, that's just
Right.
whitewashing
Right.
what we're doing. We want to
Right.
stay focused on poverty. And it became part of this National Action Organization, including the retired senior volunteers, everybody else. And so the goal of the agency then became promote volunteerism in public service.
Yeah.
The other thing that the other thing to realize that if you get an AmeriCorps volunteer, you have to raise a lot of matching money. I mean, these aren't free slots. Yeah. So there's this public allies, placement, public ally. Those students, those folks who go through public allies, they're getting like $25,000 a year with benefits and so forth. But about half of that has to be raised by the local sponsor. So they're going to be going to those of you who have foundations. You got to come up with a lot of money to put.
There's an interesting new guy at ASU. I don't know if you've met him. He just came from Yale. He was at Yale for 10 years. And he's got the same last name as Brian. Anyway, but he's in charge of that public allies over the graduate program at ASU. He's a sparkling character. Yeah, he is. So he might be a good new resource. And I'll think of his name for this meeting.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, I think Marguerite Casey would be a key player moving forward. We're a new grantee of theirs. I know you're a grantee, not Joe or you guys. But I know they gave a grant to the Community Action Association. So they're clearly investing in Arizona. And I think they could be a key convener or whatever in this going forward, because they've already their money where their mouth is. They've made the investment, and so.
Yeah, and like I said, they're very interested. Peter would like to have been here, and I'll be in touch with him afterwards. So, and that's one person I'll just put in contact with you, for y'all to follow up.
We got him on the list, and he said.
Yeah,
that he
you
wanted
sent
to-
him out. Yeah, you sent out the.
He wanted to be included, and that's kind of why we were taping, so he could log on to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear what we're saying.
I know. I'm really
You
sorry.
might not like everything we're saying.
Right.
Kind of blender.
That's our version of what.
I've been taped a few times, and it's gotten into a little trouble.
Get your hand slapped, huh?
Right.
Just tell them we dubbed it in.
I just say at this point, since I've been in the field for so long, it's age. It's age.
Senior moment.
Or at least respect my seniority. Or something. So, we can
Do you
start.
have any?
Yeah,
Any closing thoughts?
I don't know if we can say any more about what would be the next step of convening people, or what people would suggest in terms of other people who should be at the table. And maybe what we could do is at least get people together and talk, and at least some people go to neighborhood funders. Maybe can get a voice from Arizona to go there, at least some people. So I don't know if anybody, if we just, those of us who are here, if you would be willing to meet again and add on some people that might also be interested, like someone from the Community Foundation. I don't know if Piper would be interested. Do you think they might be? Yeah.
They're so bifurcated on children and elderly and arts.
Yeah.
There's nobody in social policy.
Right.
So maybe it's Judy, as opposed to Carol and Marilyn. But Judy might be.
I did invite them to. They're on the list. If anybody thinks of anyone that should be included, just send me an email. You kind of all should have my email address from the invitation to this, and we'll add them to and kind of try to create a growing list of people, and either keep in touch through memos and new information that's come out, and then not have a whole lot of these meetings, but occasionally when we have a good reason to pull it together to try to do this.
If you want to read
also take some individual tasks. If there's a person in a foundation that's maybe a little leery right now, to do some individual meetings, you know, to start sensing where they're at with some of this public policy, social justice, you know, advocacy work. Might be another thing. People taking on some one-to-ones.
How much influence could there be if somebody who has like a smaller family fund within the Arizona Community Foundation or the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona in that supports? Like I'm thinking of some of the family foundations fund. It's very small, but are housed within the community foundations, and having a conversation with them about speaking up a bit more. Do they have any? Is there much leverage there?
I think that's exactly, I think that has huge potential. That's
Yeah.
what I've been trying to have conversations with the Arizona Community Fund. My sense is, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, that many of those very small family foundations, they're just disconnected. They might not know about
I think that's
what's going on, and to find ways to communicate with the community, I think has huge potential. I've been able to figure out how to do that.
And one of the struggles that we're having is anyone who's part of ACF and donor advised fund, they automatically are members of AGF. And at this point, it's at no cost, so there's really no reason to not be involved. I just don't know if they don't understand what that means. And Marissa and I have been talking about this. I think that maybe we need to get involved with ACF a little more. And if they're signing people on, then maybe we should be in the room, or they should monthly have a presentation for all the new folks and say, hey, you're coming to AGF. We have to do something because all those people are out
I
of the
think
loop.
that's an untapped, that's a whole
And it's on top for us too. I mean, because we're missing out.
Right. So, I mean, I'd be happy to help in any way, happy to do any panel presentation or anything. I really think that's important.
Right, because that's a lot of people.
It's huge. In New Mexico, that makes up 1/3 of our membership.
Yeah, I was gonna say. It adds up too.
Yeah, it adds up. It adds up. And it's small. Some have assets of $1 million, some have less, some have 5 million. But it adds up.
And they usually have a little more flexibility too.
Oh yeah.
Because they just talk about what they want to do.
Right.
Right, strict guidelines.
That's another.
But as part of that, though, you need a lot of education. Because I've also found that most of them, you think the trustees are hard to move in a large foundation. These people a lot of them are just funding whatever appealed to their family or whatever disease their family had to deal with, and that's all they're gonna fund. So to get them to see a bigger view, and it's a long way from here to there.
You gotta start somewhere.
But you gotta start somewhere, yeah, and I'd love to see that happen. And I think AGF is one of the key players that could get to that.
And maybe the affinity group, Small Family Foundation, I mean, that's just a small group of people. But even there to have a discussion, maybe a few of those people, would, and if people knew that this was a topic coming up or whatever, they might attract some people that are,
Well, if you want, I can invite you guys to the Small Family Foundation, and if one of you can make it, just come out and talk a little bit maybe. I don't know. You do that.
So
I think that's
that's
great.
a strategy that the Stranahan family members of Needmor have done across the country. They consciously inserted themselves into those discussions. And so it's one-on-one. It's people of wealth, people with resources talking to each other. It's not about, some conference that we, because people want to be private, obviously, about, who and what they are. But so it's been that personal relationship of family members saying, this is what we're doing. This is how we think about it. This is how it ties in, and then it's brought other folks wanting to, so if you're getting 10 out of 100 or 5 out of 20 people who move a bit, that's really it. And I think of how they built the Chicago Foundation for Women, or some of the other big sort of collaborative funding groups in Chicago. It was all personal. It was all. It was a strategy of people talking to each other. We're social friends, we're business friends, whatever it is, and then they just say, here's what I'm into. Here's what I'm interested in.
The intimate connections, like you're talking about, you might have one donor. That donor has a dinner party for 6 people who might potentially be like-minded. You're invited to gently work through, you know, and it's that type of intimate setting where the discussions might start at a different level and very slowly, and you sort of bring it along. I mean, it's a very intimate level of philanthropy, spreading the word.
Like I said earlier, I see EGF as a conduit, but I think you said earlier that usually foundation to foundation conversations